Mark, there have been some big changes that have happened within the past year at RugbyTown USA. June 2020, Infinity Park officially became the RugbyTown National Training Center for the women's and men's US Eagles, the 15 side, and USA Rugby moved its headquarters to Glendale. Tell me a bit more about that partnership and how it came about.
Well, as you know, USA Rugby was in some financial difficulties and going through bankruptcy. And as part of that, Glendale offered the opportunity for USA Rugby to move from Broomfield down to Glendale and offer them the opportunity to use the facilities as part of a national training center, if you will. And after numerous discussions, that was agreed to, and USA Rugby moved their headquarters to Glendale, and they are approximately 2 blocks from the rugby facility. So that's convenient for them. That allows them to utilize our facilities. They also utilize in our building, which is our basic rugby facility building. On the 3rd floor, they have offices there for their high performance program. And then on the 2nd floor is the Glendale rugby offices. So we have opportunities to interact with them, but more importantly, they have a place to be. And then when they bring in their national teams, everything's really centralized, which I think is really important for them.
Yeah, it really is, and brilliant facilities as well, and it makes logistical sense. Now, this week is Women's Rugby Week with the top 50 players in the country training and playing right here. Can you comment on the City of Glendale's involvement with the women's game over the years?
Well, with the women's game over the years, when we started in the beginning, because I started the program, and that was in 2006. And when we started, we incorporated women's program as part of what we were doing. And we've facilitated the women's club playing here in Glendale throughout the years. And so that was just part of, what we did as part of trying to develop rugby and move through rugby with youth rugby, adult rugby, both the men and the women. And then when USA Rugby came in, we're the training center for both the men and the women. And moving into this week with the Stars and Stripes matches, the U.S. women camp members have been staying in Glendale in apartments that we actually rent for our professional players who are not in town at this point in time. And so the women's team has been here for the last 2 months training.
Yeah, I want to say they've done a remarkable job with a bubble, making sure everybody is safe, and that's the most important part. Now let's switch across to crossovers. We've seen, especially in sevens, unbelievable athletes from other sports who've now dominated the sport of rugby. What is the RugbyTown Crossover Academy, and how's it set up?
Yeah, well, actually, it's an interesting thing because it's a concept that Mike Dunoff and I have had for almost 20 years of how do we get those players in, but over the years, it's just been random, hit and miss. Guys come out, play rugby. Somebody says, hey, when you play rugby, they go, yeah, I'll try it. And that's some guy that happened to be playing basketball or football for some major university. And they often have breakout seasons. Not everybody, but certainly a significant number of those players do. So part of our idea was how do we identify potential players? And so we really took a look at the collegiate university athletic scene and also pro sports, because our best athletes are playing professional sports, making lots of money doing that. So we said, well, let's get a database, let's research all these players, and then let's invite them into a camp and then offer them an opportunity to play professional rugby and contract them. So we'll contract them to our program so that they can have full professional training to upskill them to rugby. Because it's not like in the old days where, Luke Gross got invited to play rugby and then he trained Tuesday and Thursday nights for 90 minutes or 2 hours. We want to train them full time and, really in effect, upskill them in a quick amount of time because we think that we can make a difference. So we basically went out to universities and across NFL and coaches and just went out looking for players.
And let's talk some of the specifics and logistics. Somebody gets told to apply and what happens next?
Well, so what we do, and we identify a player, and our biggest challenge, we have a huge database, over 3,000 athletes. But our challenge is actually making contact with the players, because our data that we get is off of the NFL websites or college university programs, and they don't necessarily have phone numbers and Twitter feeds and so forth. So we really struggle to get in contact. But once we make contact and we talk to them about what we're doing, and if they're interested, we immediately send them a rugby ball. We immediately send them some links to passing and so forth and things that we like to do, show them a clip of rugby. And then afterwards, we will then, with a select group of guys, we'll have a Zoom meeting and we'll review film. And so we'll kind of go through film and just have the film and then ask them, what are your questions? What do you see? What do you think? And that's part of that's to get them involved. And part of that is because we want them to know we're interested and we want them to be interested in what we're doing. So we're building relationships because rugby and what we do is about relationships. So we're trying to build a relationship with the player. And then obviously we want them to come to our camp, which 35 players have done.
And let's talk about that. So at least it's less intimidating that they get to see rugby and get to ask all the questions they have before they get there. Once they arrive, they're there for 5 days. Can you walk us through kind of what that would look like for them?
Well, yeah, obviously we're in the world of COVID. So the first thing is, they have to get COVID tested. They get tested before they come here. So they had to have a test before they came. Once they got here, they have to have a test. And then we go through the normal protocols. And they're in effect, a bubble. Before they came, they were asked to self-isolate. Once they're here, they're in their group. And even on the field, they're in groups of 9, because that's what our requirement is right now. When we started the camp, we could have groups of 50. Then it was reduced to 25. And now we have 9 per group. So it changed what we were planning to do. We were hoping to have an inter-squad scrimmage at the end, but we didn't do that. We didn't ask for a variance to do that. But we feel we can see what we want out of the players and what we're doing. So once they came in, we then began with, what I'd call basic rugby skills, things that we are introducing to them. And what I find most interesting is we start off and it's pretty confusing and you're like going, oh my gosh. But once they see what we're doing, they have a model. That's the problem we don't have as role models necessarily. But once they see what we're doing, the learning curve goes up dramatically. And so by the end of the particular activity or skill drill that you're doing, you can see vast improvement. And that's, I think, related to the fact that they're very athletic and they've been in athletic environments.
Yeah, and what sort of sporting backgrounds have you found make the transition a lot easier? And are there certain sports that translate better to certain positions in rugby?
Well, that's a vast question. The real, when I look at who transitions, I think basketball transitions really well, and ice hockey. We don't have any ice hockey players. We have some basketball people. We have wrestlers. We have U.S. bobsled people, and then primarily are the football guys. But what I'm finding in our camp, which I found in the past with individual players, is football guys adapt fairly quickly. They're really good athletes. And all of the athletes we've recruited are multiple sport athletes. So we not only look at their university background and get them, because they went to LSU or they went to Purdue. We also look at their high school huddle films. So we go back and look at their high school. We look at what they've done. So we do a pretty good, I think, research on what they have done in the past. And all of these athletes, if they played football, they also wrestle, track and field. They played basketball. One played volleyball. So across the board, we're looking for multi-sport athletes who've already demonstrated that they can play multiple sports at a high level.
And what does the hashtag Mission 23 represent? I know you're a Zuckerberg on the web.
Mission 23, we have a number of goals. One is to develop these players so they have an opportunity to be seen by the U.S. national team. So we would like them to have the opportunity to represent the USA. So for us, our goal is win a World Cup. And that's going to be, obviously down the line. But we want to populate the team with these high quality athletes into the U.S. program. So we've had the U.S. high performance director here observing, and they've indicated that they're interested in 8 of our guys already. just by watching them move and so forth. And I'm talking about interested in that. These are kind of guys we'd like to have in a camp also. Well, their camp will be here because at the end of the week, we'll be offering players opportunity to stay and train. And our goal is to compete in the January to May, COVID allowing us to have competition so they can get games and get experience.
Yeah, I think that's the most exciting thing about sports in America, right? Is all these athletes that aren't playing their chosen sport, if you will, and coming across to rugby. We've seen it with the women's and the men. Talk a little bit about the staff who are providing this expertise, coaching, transitioning these players.
Yeah, well, obviously I'm involved, but we have Pete Borlays, who's our head coach, Luke Gross, who's a crossover athlete himself, is coaching the forwards. We have Sarah Shabbat, USA national team player, a couple of World Cups, is also working with us and is part of our staff now. Mose Timoteo, also USA 7s and 15s national team players, also part of our staff. So that's the main part of our on-field coaching staff.
And then in many ways, you're like the Queen of England. You've been around since the beginning of time.
I'm older than dirt.
And you were there when, as you said, in 2006 when plans and then the facility was built in 2007, Infinity Park. What were the goals, the early goals for rugby there, and how have they evolved over the past 13 years?
Actually, I think the goal has always been the same. This is more of the fact that I get to drive the goal, perhaps. And when I started coaching rugby, which is 1986, back in the dark ages, the goal then was to obviously develop a high school team and program, but it was really to allow players to play at their highest level and try to give them the tools to play at whatever level they want to play, be that club, be that representative rugby, or be it for the U.S. national team. So that was the goal when I started, and that's still the goal today. It was the goal when we started our program, which was to introduce the community rugby. But our goal on the field with the team is to create an environment where players can excel, and that ability to excel is both individually and as a unit, as a team. So obviously part of that's winning championships or being in the hunt for one. But by being in the hunt for one, individually, players have an opportunity to demonstrate their success, demonstrate their ability, and perhaps they have an opportunity to move on and represent their country or whatever level they want to represent.
Well, Mark, on behalf of the rugby community, I know you're a former slippery eel, electric eel yourself, and current legend. We want to thank you for everything you do for the game. It's just wonderful to see what you're up to.
Well, thank you so much, Dallin. It's nice talking with you. And I hope you enjoy the snow this winter.
Thank you very much.